Hey everyone, my name's Keith Miller, and welcome to another live stream of Aligning the Mind to Open the Heart. That's my weekly meditation that I just started on the Soul of Life channel. I'm a podcaster. I'm the host of the Soul of Life podcast, which you can check out on YouTube and anywhere you listen to podcasts. Exciting time right now to be in this sort of break between seasons. Wrapped my first season of the Soul of Life a few weeks ago, and with 18 episodes, and then starting season 2 of the Soul of Life on February 5th. And you can check out some previews that are coming up. Great shows. NASA scientist John Mather, Ellen Langer, the mother of the positive psychology movement, the mother of mindfulness, science researcher. Jessica Hansen is the NPR voice coach, and I'll be talking with her on Monday. So recording all these great episodes. Gary Mula, an episode on musicianship and producing music in Seattle, in a place called the Grungiest Studio in Seattle. And so I'm excited about a lot of things happening on the podcast. But of course, I'm a social worker, and I've been a social worker for 20 years in private practice doing psychotherapy. And, my goal in doing the Soul of Life podcast is really to bring to life some of the wisdom and learning that comes from my years of sitting with people in the healing work that I do as a healer. And so the Soul of Life podcast is a place where psychology comes to life in science, athletics, the arts, culture, and spirituality. So I'm excited for all the people that are joining in, popping in right now. I can see that number growing each second. So welcome. Today is, the time goes by fast, so I want to jump right in. Today is a lesson which I'll be doing to build on each week, but basic lesson on IFS, internal family systems therapy, and also a short meditation, a way to practice forming a relationship with our inner lives. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. What is your relationship with your inner life, your inner experience? The other name for IFS is self-leadership. And I think that's a more functional name for it. A lot of people get hung up on the idea of internal family systems. They're not quite sure what that means. And it's based on the idea that we have these parts of us that behave kind of like a family. Sometimes they get into conflicts with each other, and we all carry these polarities with us. Parts of us that want to do one thing, and then parts that want to do another thing. And how do we balance that? How do we make sense of our inner life? It can get a little chaotic and confusing, and our parts tend to take us over. So self-leadership is kind of the outcome of working with our parts. And it's sort of like what I view as the way an orchestra conductor works with people in the orchestra, that all parts are welcome, that there's ways to separate parts from each other and have sections. And you can work on each section, work on developing a relationship between yourself and, say, the part of you that works hard to get things done, that's driving, that pushes you, that manages things. We'll be talking about managers today. And you can separate that part from the other part of you that may be interested in procrastinating, maybe wants to push things off, maybe wants to let back and sit back and let other people do things. So you can begin to mediate these things. As a conductor, you can begin to separate and work with those different parts. And then eventually they can integrate and come back together. So the format today, I'll be teaching a little bit now, then we'll do a short 15-minute guided meditation. Excuse me. If I didn't get that cough out of the way, it was going to be chasing me the whole time. And I hope everyone's well. I mean, this has been a stressful period, not just during COVID, but during this past week, as we watch, whenever there's people around us who are in conflict, our bodies respond. Our bodies keeps the score, and so this can be a wonderful way to get in touch with what's happening in your body and begin to release that energy. So unlike typical meditation, which tends to just focus on letting things go, which is wonderful, right? Those of you who have meditation practices. And by the way, pop in and give me a thumbs up if you're excited by what you're hearing, or if you're interested in what you're hearing, and be sure to put some questions in there. Helps to really see other people chiming in. on the chat. I can see many people joining us now, so thank you. I'm glad you're here. So instead of just letting things go, which can be one form of improving your mental health and stress reduction, IFS helps you fully connect to and sort of embrace and be curious about the different parts of you and work with them, and then they can release and let go. So it's a little bit of a different process. Especially helpful if you find yourself stuck in anxious or negative thoughts and you want to feel more calm. Maybe you already have a sitting practice and you want to work with the emotions that come up. You don't want to just put them aside. Well, this is a great place for you as well. So a little bit, about IFS, a little bit more. Natural multiplicity is kind of what it's about. And I refer you to the episode I did with the founder of IFS, Dr. Richard Schwartz. And he, goes into great detail teaching about what that means. All of our parts are welcome. And how we focus on our parts changes the experience of you. Our brain is amazing. It's a lot more than just any one experience that we're having at any moment. We're learning so much more and more about the brain every day. And this method of being with your parts, paying attention to what you're paying attention to and interacting with it, is, I think, a fascinating way to get to know and increase your EQ, your emotional intelligence, certainly, and getting to know who you really are. So how we focus on our parts changes the parts, and it changes how you experience life. And by focusing on one part at a time, we find that this core self emerges. Our parts are kind of around the self, protecting us. And as we work with each one to relax and not protect us, and deal with the constraints that they may have, the beliefs that they have about why they need to protect us a certain way, we realize we can experience the world in a more creative way, a more spontaneous way, and often imaginative. And often it feels calming. So today's one concept is this question: what is your experience? What is your relationship to your inner experience? What is your relationship? Do you have a relationship to your inner experience? Most of the time, we are living in the world outside us, and even my use of my hand here, right? So like we're constantly manipulating the world around us, and that's what our species is. It's so amazing about us in our human capacity to manipulate what's in front of us, to predict things, to anticipate things, and to plan things. That's what makes us uniquely human. At the same time, that skill, that attribute, that higher intelligence disassociates us from our very being, our very core. Because our body, just like all animals and all creatures, is biological. It's responsive immediately to the environment. It's incredibly sensory. And all of that activity is happening in the lower brain regions. And our awareness is just sitting on top, like 1% of that activity, just observing just a little bit. And it thinks it knows everything, of course. But all the sensory activity is down here, and it's directly in touch with the outside world. I just had an interview this past week with Dr. Ellen Langer. She's the oldest tenured professor at Harvard University, and she's the preeminent researcher on mindfulness. And it was interesting. It's a little spicy. She's a scientist, and and she studies mindfulness from a science perspective, and I'm a teacher of mindfulness. So it was a really interesting conversation to hear kind of her attitude towards, the practice of what we're doing with mindfulness. But the interesting thing about our mindlessness is the idea, which we talked about quite a bit with Dr. Langer, is that our parts, our mind states, these automated responses we have to things, take us over. They actually dominate most of our life. And this is normal, by the way. If I'm angry, I'm in my anger. Often we use this language: I'm angry, I'm sad. Well, the truth is, when we notice and pay attention, we're much more than just our feelings. I think all of us would agree with that. And so it really doesn't do us any favor to kind of operate under this mythology that you are these parts. Like in some way you are. You can blend with these parts. You can become angry. But it is much more accurate and more representative, again, thinking of the orchestra conductor, of remembering your whole sense. That in fact, when you're angry, you have a part of you that has become angry and it has moved to the front. It's like driving the bus. It doesn't mean that you're angry. It means one part of you is taken over. If you've ever seen the movie Inside Out, the Pixar animation, which seems like a kid's movie, but it's really like aimed right at right at adults, you can see these parts taking over the consciousness of the main character in that movie. That's pretty accurate. So whenever we notice that, oh, it's a part of me that just took over the steering wheel, all of a sudden now you're more in charge. Your whole self is beginning to emerge. And that's what we're aiming for in IFS. Most of us tend to ignore or try to manage our inner experience. And we have these terms in IFS called managers. A lot of parts are protecting us from things, and they're doing that in advance of a problem. They've experienced a problem in the past, some sort of pain, some sort of disappointment or betrayal or sadness, and they don't want that to happen again. So preeminently, that's what anxiety is. It's getting out in front of something, even when you really don't need to, just in case, right? Managers always say, well, just in case. Well, it wouldn't hurt to, I don't have an empty tank yet, but, why wait till it gets down to a quarter of a tank? I should probably put it in when it's 3/4. Well, you can understand how an anxiety issue begins to take over with manager parts that are getting involved. Because manager parts will tell you all the time, they'll say to you, well, what's the harm in just doing that of preparing a little more? Well, the harm actually can be because it costs a lot of energy. And that's how we can get very depressed when we feel like there's no energy. Well, it turns out our managers are sucking that energy out for all of these little frittering things that they think they have to do, when in fact they really need leadership from our core. They really need someone to be able to say, why not just deal with the problem if there's a problem? Let's wait until the problem actually starts and then begin to react. So it's a little more risky, a little more spontaneous, but much less costly, and you can operate through life. You can go through life a lot lighter when you've worked with your managers and help them be in a ready state, but not like dominating, like the military. Like you can think of the military dominating martial law, like, restricts everything, restricts all sorts of things. So you are more than the activity of your parts. And as we turn our attention to this amazing landscape that you have inside you, I'm going to just end on that note here. It is an amazing landscape. I'm going to invite you to begin to appreciate the vast complexity of what's going on inside you. It's often much more than we appreciate and much more than we are experiencing at any one moment. It's like we have our little pinky toe dipped into our full experience. And through this meditation, I'm going to invite you to maybe stand and move into, walk into kind of a little more of your whole experience. So with that said, find a comfortable posture. We'll take the next 10 minutes or so to do a short meditation here. Find a comfortable posture for you, maybe sitting. It may be lying on the floor. I have parts of me that tend to be, I have a lot of manager parts in my life. So I tend to do parts work and meditation work much easier on my back lying down. Some people, that's like an excess. That's like a cue to just fall asleep. For me, it's just enough like, okay, I can actually now begin to find clarity. So I'm going to invite you to go inside. And what that can mean is you might close your eyes if you're comfortable doing that. And just begin to notice what's here for you today. You can begin to let go of managing your inner experience. And you're just noticing what's here. What are the qualities you feel in your breath? Sensations in your body as you sit. The sounds you're hearing. the smells, the experience of light coming through your eyelids. You may begin now to allow these events to happen without needing to respond to them. You can pay full attention to what's happening in and around your body. And often when we're guiding using an IFS meditation, we will prompt with the idea of imagining what these parts look like. So if you have a part that feels prominent for you as you begin to quiet your activity and sit, maybe it's a feeling, maybe it's a thought or a group of thoughts. You might visualize that and let the image just come to you. You don't have to work too hard. Usually it becomes clear. Some of my parts feel like if they're manager parts, they feel like a band of horses. They're running somewhere, they're going somewhere. What image appears to you with this part that's present at this moment for you? And you might just witness for a few moments what that part is doing. What is its activity? What does it look like? Almost as though you're in the front row of a movie theater. You're there, you're present, you're not totally detached from it, but you're not in the action now. It's like you've put the clutch in on the car, in the gears, and they're still going, but there's more space. And what does this part say to you? What is it telling you? And simply listen. Listening requires empathy and some openness. It activates our right brain, our imaginative brain, our associative and visual brain. As you listen to this part, there's a you that's listening, and there's the part, the activity. Maybe we may think of that as the automated side of you. Parts have agendas. They're not directly in the moment. And just follow your curiosity, as you may even begin to have a conversation with this part of you. And yeah, you're talking to yourself. That's what we do all the time if we really admit it. So you're allowing this conversation to happen. Following your curiosity. And you may begin to notice, as is often the case, when you attempt to listen to one part and focus on one part of you, it turns out other parts show up and start maybe debating, interfering, distracting. So being the listener, being the orchestra conductor, sometimes comes easy for us, different moments. Other times it's not so simple. Just like little kids, if we begin to pay attention to one, well, all the other kids notice they want attention and they start coming forward. And sometimes there's a crowd, and that's okay. You may simply let them all know that there's time and that you're beginning this practice. You're beginning to notice a lot more of what's going on inside of you. And if there is not time today, you'll be back for them, each individually. So you're following your curiosity, and maybe you may even ask a part to wait. It may be so important that you're allowing what's coming forward for the one part that you're working with to come forward, and you may turn to the other parts and ask them to wait their turn. Reassure them that you'll come back. Or some parts are so impatient and so pressured, you have to turn to them and ask the first part to wait, and that's okay too. Allowing yourself to breathe, giving yourself room in your body, your whole body, below your neck. So much emotion, so much meaning and many messages that are in our face, in our neck, in our chest. If there's not a part that comes clearly to you, to mind, you may simply ask what it feels like here in your chest. What does it feel like here in your throat, in your face, behind your eyes? What does it feel like in your stomach? So much activity. There's more signals coming from our lower intestine and in our heart, signals that are afferent, going from the peripheral nervous system to the central nervous system. Signals coming up, and you're simply asking, what's it tuning into? What's it dealing with? What's it holding on to? What's your heart holding on to today? And even as you may notice, put my hand here on my heart, you may do the same thing. Use what you have. Your hands they know what it's like to touch and to reach out and to receive and to soothe and to calm. Like an antenna. Your hand is like an antenna. You may just put it on a part of your body and begin to ask it. A lot of times we're using our hand to, like a hammer, like a tool. It's always doing something, manipulating something. This is different. You may just put your hand on a part of your body, central part of your body, your stomach perhaps. And rather than it be passive, as we often are prompted to do in meditation, you may invite your hand to be as active as it needs to be, receiving information. And whatever you're receiving, you may simply let it know that there's space for it, there's compassion for it. It may be unpleasant things. Often when we sit and quiet our manager parts, when we ask them to trust us and not have to work ahead of time, often there's energy that's released, relaxing. And you may offer compassion to these parts that are working so hard for you, managing your life, aware of what could go wrong. Those are so valuable. Just imagine. And you may say this to them, I'm not sure I could do this without you. We need those manager parts to learn from past mistakes and problems and to keep us moving in the right direction. Managers know what's right and what's wrong. They keep track, they keep score. We'd be lost in life without knowing where we fit in and where to go. So many, many thanks for your manager parts, appreciating them. They're not bad. And let them know that they have room to step back. It's safe inside of you. It's safe within you. This inner landscape and this inner experience is yours. You are here with it. And for some of us, that can be a new experience. And it can bring up question marks about, well, is that really true? We have skeptical parts. The last time I was really myself, here's what happened. Maybe we were very, very young when we were that spontaneous and that open hearted. And that's okay. Those parts are carrying the memories of things that went sideways for us. And you may simply let them know that there's time, there's space for that energy that they're carrying, that fear that they're carrying. And just that you're appreciating how hard they're working for you. And as we're closing here, just noticing your breath, really allowing your breath to slow and deepen, allowing your in-breath to be maybe a count of 5 or 6 seconds. Letting your belly rise, breathing in everything that you need. And without effort, letting go, maybe to a count of 6 or 8. Slowly. There's no hurry to get back to the next breath. Each breath a gift, each breath an act of faith in your body, in the next moment, in this wonderful, amazing universe that supports us. Especially during COVID, we need this message that there is space for us. We hear about problems all the time, all day. And from our body's perspective, from our soul perspective, everything's here as it needs to be. We're all in the right place and we're all in the right time. And you may simply whisper this message, sort of like a prayer, to all of your parts. They are all here for in the right place. They all belong. And just notice the response that comes back. Notice the energy that you may feel, as some parts accept that readily, some parts don't. That's okay. Just keep track. Notice. Like a good conductor, you're paying attention to who needs more special attention, who needs more TLC. So you may journal with those parts. You may speak for those parts to a friend, to your therapist. They're going to need more time. Like little kids, they need more time until they get what they need, and then off they go. And they don't nag you anymore. So thank you. As we bring this meditation time to a close, just a couple of minutes left. And I'll encourage you to post a question here. You can always get in touch with me through the website. Drop a question if you wanted to share feedback, appreciations. I'd love to hear what people appreciate about this. You can contact me through the website, keithmillercounseling.com. And excuse me, and of course, souloflifeshow.com. Either one of those, you can find a contact page there, and private message me or private message on Facebook, the Soul of Life page, or the YouTube channel, Soul of Life Show. Thank you so much. And one final thing to ask is if you would mention a topic that you'd like me to cover in the future. That would be great to hear. Again, you don't have to share it publicly. That's fine, privately. But if you want to share it publicly, that's helpful for others to hear. And just a favor to ask, if you appreciate this and like this, please like the Facebook page, like the YouTube channel, subscribe to the YouTube channel. And I'll be here for you every week, every Friday, noon Eastern. And I don't see questions that I'm popping in directly. I'm hearing thank you for the feedback about how that was going, about anxiety. I saw that, and that's really helpful. Yeah, it is useful to think of anxiety as a preemptive way of activating a manager. It's a manager getting going. So thank you for your time and for your trust here. Please share this with others. Love to spread this so that it can be a free resource for people who need it, especially now. I think we all need it. Thank you for being here.